So thank you. It's a pleasure to have all of you here. Thank you, Larry, for being together with me on this project. And thank you for Palgrave for having published a book in time for this talk. We're standing on the shoulder of giants in this program on negotiation and the affiliates at MIT. So I want to thank all our colleagues who have researched negotiation, researched entrepreneurship. I want to thank the entrepreneurs in the room, advisors, friends, colleagues, and family. But I want to start with a story. It's a story about Fallon and Fernando, two individuals who are thinking of being entrepreneurs. Fallon already has a prototype, a business plan, and a good pitch. They're introduced, they talk to each other, they actually like each other. They explore how they could work together, and they decided it would be worthwhile exploring starting a startup together. They each go to prepare. She promises her trusted advisors that she won't make any commitments without checking back with her and with her lawyer. Meanwhile, Fernando, he's doing his due diligence. He's trying to figure out everything he can about Fallon and about her invention. They're both thinking of whether they should negotiate on their own or they should use agents. When they finally get to the negotiation table, the first thing they do is they negotiate how they're actually going to negotiate. They disagree on how big the market's going to be and what the valuation of the company should be. They also disagree on what equity stake Fernando should get for his contribution and how that's going to change over the years. They realize they need a timeout. They go back to their back table and they readjust their process of negotiation. Fallon and Fernando negotiated. They were tough on each other, but they communicated well. They listened to each other, they explored options, and they finally have a deal. They are now both co-founders of a seed stage company. And they have to get to work. He gives them some money so they can start with the next few months. They're happy, they're thrilled, they can pay themselves a little bit of salary and start working. But that's not enough. And they go hat in hand to this angel investor, and they convince him.
That's too low.
It should be twice the amount.
But in the end, they compromise on the number. They're working frantically. There's no clear roles and responsibility for who does what. There's not time to communicate. This is a startup. They're working very hard. There's some conversations, some difficult conversations they need to have. But they don't have them. They get some first customers who are willing to buy the product. They're hiring some great new employees. This venture capitalist, he wants to invest millions of dollars in this venture. Meanwhile, they can't spend too much time on that because they have to build a company. They have to keep working. So negotiating in parallel of accelerating the schedule in order to meet some technical milestones, in order to show progress to the VC so he would invest. The lawyer actually takes the side of the angel investor.
Whose side are you on? You're fired.
Fallon fires the lawyer. He's also the uncle's lawyer and their lawyer. They are considering forgoing their own salaries, firing half the people, slowing down the development plan. It's an aggressive plan, but Fallon thinks they should do it.
I say yes.
I say no.
I say yes.
I say no.
This is my company.
You're being childish now.
You're fired.
Fallon fires Fernando. But wait, if you or Fallon and Fernando understand better the relationships that are critical to success of entrepreneurship, you'll be able to have an alternative, better ending to this story. They like your product, they like your pitch, they like your plan. They actually make an offer to buy the company. Fallon and Fernando consider this and decide to sell the company for a lot of money. This is their successful exit. The end. Welcome. Why did we write this book? My own reason, I've been focusing on helping others learn what I wished I had 25 years ago, because negotiation is critical in entrepreneurship. And that's the gap Larry and I were looking to fill a niche and a need that is out there. So we researched the material, read all the books, used some of our own experience as entrepreneurs and as mediators of disputes, and tried to write something that would be useful for the Mooley or the Larry, and for entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, or people who work with startups today. Larry started a course at MIT in order to teach students entrepreneurial negotiation skill. Relationships are critical, and we decided we wanted to dig deeper and find entrepreneurs who are willing to share their own experiences, their own mistakes, their own failures, their own learnings from earlier in their career. And so we have the diverse group of brave entrepreneurs willing to go on camera and share some of our self-reflections. In the book, we have actually 8 cases that we talk about. And they correlate to the 8 common mistakes that we talk about. And we quote some research that has to do with the lessons learned in each of these cases. How important it is to have ground rules before you start. Not just how you're going to negotiate, but also what norms and expectations do you have. Your self-identity, your culture, your biases are key. And they're different for each of us. So you should have the awareness of what your identity, your norms, your values, your culture, your biases. And with this discussion, we also looked at this issue of gender bias and cultural challenges in negotiation. When uncertainty is higher, people fall to stereotypes easier. So when we look at this learning process of how you trust your intuition and don't think about negotiation as your own personal theory of practice, that's where you may fail. And to solve that, we propose this entrepreneurial negotiation loop, trying to prevent these mistakes before they happen. How do you develop your awareness for when they happen at the table? How do you respond to them in a way that minimizes the damage? How do you reflect on what just happened, figure out what worked well, what are the lessons learned, and how you develop your own theory of practice? And that's the theme that goes through this book, from laying out the galaxy to looking at the different mistakes, to looking at some real live examples in written interviews or in videos, and then some prescriptive advice on how to close the loop and improve your outcomes.
The thing that got me intrigued about entrepreneurial negotiation in the beginning are those 4 features that Muli talked about. The incredible pressure created by the complexity and the uncertainty surrounding and embedded in these kinds of negotiations. There's complexity in other negotiations. There's uncertainty in other negotiations. But every entrepreneurial negotiation we looked at, everything's got to be done very quickly because there's a surprise going to happen at any moment, or the whole world is going to collapse around us if we don't get this done by this time. Uncertainty, complexity, and the importance of relationships. Relationships become way more important than other kinds of buy-sell things where I'm never going to see this person again. Discovering these kinds of moments, particularly within entrepreneurial negotiation, posed a challenge. What do we know about other kinds of negotiations? What do we know about from all the empirical work, 70, 80, 90 studies, that can help somebody at that moment? How can we, as people who study negotiation, be usefully prescriptive for people who are going to confront that they don't know it yet? In the book, we try to be usefully prescriptive. In the course, we try to be usefully prescriptive, to try to change your personal theory of practice so it doesn't happen again.
Am I hearing you correctly that in entrepreneurial negotiations, maybe relationships are more significant than we've been led to believe in other types of negotiations?
The relationship is not about like. The relationship is about trust. If you think trust is not important in an ongoing interaction in which you're going to be continuously negotiating, I think you're in for a terrible time. And we talk about this and apply it in the book. But basically it boils down to 2 things. Say what you mean what you say. There's no other way to build trust except to work on the relationship. And if you don't do that and you don't have trust, any kind of long-term partnership, I think, is impossible. So I think it's very, very important. It's not about like, it's about trust.
How universal, from a cultural perspective, do you think the tips on negotiation are?
The world of entrepreneurship is globalized and continues to be globalized. On the one hand, I'm arguing there's greater universality than there ever was. And at the same time, I'm arguing the more we understand, the more we know how important context is. You think this might be a problem, don't go alone and don't go, don't assume that it's going to be the same. Assume you have to learn something and you need someone who can help you find that out.
The generational differences, people in their 20s, people in their 40s and 50s have, in this country, I mean all over the world, have such different values, ways to communicate, what's important. Do you consider that at all in the discussions?
Yeah, and I can let some of the entrepreneurs that are in the book here answer. We have a diverse group even in the room today. We looked at all those things, and I think the tension that Larry was mentioning between universality and specific culture in today's world, where a lot of people are bicultural, goes to this age thing as well. Be careful not to make generalizations and assumptions, because that person that you're walking to meet from Saudi Arabia may have been educated in Switzerland and went to college in the US and managed a company in Japan before going back to Saudi. And the same way, the person that is of an older generation may know a lot better, a lot more than me or than some of the younger generation about what's in their particular area of interest, what's trending and what's not. There's a challenge, and you have to accept people for where they're rooted.
Hey, it's crucial to understand these cultural variations. I worry more about making bad decisions based on stereotypes than I do about making bad decisions because I'm not sufficiently able to read cultural or age or other context. I think we need to be modest in our assumptions about how what we know and think we know applies in each context, but balance somehow, instead of making either or judgments. Balance, oh, I should be aware of differences. Okay, I'm aware of them. I should explore and test explicitly what my biases are before I act on them.
Well, Larry and Muli, congratulations on the book, and thank you so much for sharing the ideas in it with us tonight.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
Sign my book?
Yes.
I didn't know, but that's
Thank
great.
you.
Love
Yeah.
it so much. It's very kind of you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah? Yeah? Did you see the postcard? Hey. Yeah. Oh, it's a lifelong skill. De neta? Good luck. Good luck. I'll get back to you. All right.